Okay, how to use a financial calculator to do statistical problems in finance. Let me just take a look at this question we went over for chapter 8, and this is a scenario-based analysis. So we have 5 different scenarios from a weak, below average to strong, and they each come with certain probabilities. So this is a 10%, 20%, 40%, 20%, 10% probabilities, and under each case you may have a certain rate of return. Okay, so in the worst case, return is -5. In the below average, 5%, and so on and so forth. And you also have a T-bills return, which is consistent at a 5.5% regardless of the economic situation. Okay, so what I really want to solve here is the standard deviation, which is the measurement for risk in the financial market. So this is your calculator. Okay, you probably have done a lot of work on time value money solving, and this time I want you guys to hit stat button. Okay, and our job is to solve for the standard deviation of this rate of return based on the 5 situations and their probabilities. Okay, so the first thing you gotta do is to hit enter. Let me just clear the previous key press history. Okay, so you do stat. Okay, and then your selection. You're gonna select edit. Okay, so you have different columns you can put numbers in. So since we have 2 columns of data, one is a probability and one is a rate of return. So let me first put probability. I'm going to put a 0.1 first as a 10%, then 0.2 as a 20%, 0.4 as the 40%. Okay, and try to finish it. Okay, and then for L2, okay, I click on this red arrow. Okay, I'm going to put the returns. Well, you see the returns could be put as negative 0.5 as negative 50%, or you can just put a negative 50. Okay, that's easier for you. You don't have to do the conversion from a percentage format to a numerical format. Okay, and then negative 5. Once again, you don't have to do negative 0.005. Okay, and then 16. Okay, and then 25, and then 60. Well, you can ignore the percentage sign by just putting the number part of the values here in the column. But for probabilities, they have to add up to a value of 1, not 100, but a value of 1, which means these are all have to be in decimals. Okay, so 10%, you cannot put a number 10 there. Instead, you put a 0.1. All right. So after finishing editing the columns, okay. Oops, sorry. You need to hit the stat button again, and this time I want you to hit the right arrow, and then you have calculate. Okay, you select the calculate, and you know it is a one variable stat. Although you put 2 columns of data, but it's a 1 variable stat. Your variable is this rate of return, and the probabilities are just accelerates with that. So you hit number 1. Okay, you choose 1 variable return. Your list should be L2. That's your variable. That's your returns. So you need to put second key and then number 2. All right, so we put a second 2, you would get L2, and then you move downward. Your frequency list should be L1. Okay, second 1. So that's where you put the probabilities. Remember, you put the you put the probabilities right here. Okay, 0.1, 0.2. Okay, that's your frequency list, and then you move downward and highlight calculate, then you hit enter. Okay, hit enter. So that's the result. The X bar stands for the average or the expected, and the sigma X 26.69 is your standard deviation for this return. To verify that number, I think I have put it here. So that's how you do it in the mathematical way, 26.69%. That's a standard deviation, and you have to do a lot of work to reach that part. If you use your calculator, that's going to be much handier to do the job. All right, and you also have another column of data, which is about the T-bills. It's always 5.5%. Well, you see there's no variation across different situations or cases, so the standard deviation basically is 0 because there's no risk at all. There's no variation. If you want to put in a calculator, okay, you hit stat again, and then when you do edit, okay, you can just put 5.5 for L2 as a try it out, and then you do stat, calculate one variable stats, okay, and then list is L2, frequency is L1, and then you calculate, okay. So you will see the standard deviation is 0. Okay, sigma x is 0. Sigma is the Greek letter S. All right. One thing you will notice that some of you may have the elder version of a calculator like a TI-82 or 81 instead of 83 or 84. So if you hit one variable stat, you may not get to this screen. Your calculator does not come to this screen. Instead, your calculator just give you something like let's say your calculator will just give you one variable stat. Okay, that's what it shows on your screen. And then it's your job to type in L2, okay, and then select L1, okay, and you need to know the order. That is L2 goes first. Oops, one variable stat, that's what it shows on your screen, and you put L2 and then don't forget comma, then L1. Alright, it's your job to remember the sequence. The first column of data should record the returns or the variables. Then the second column of data should record the probabilities or frequency. Alright, so that's the operation for risk analysis when you have different scenarios. And we have another kind of analysis which is from your textbook. Okay, let's see, it's right here. Okay, it's right here. So you have 4 years of return in the past. Okay, you have 4 years of returns in the past, and from 2009 to 2012, that's your numbers: 30, -10, 19. All right. If this is the case, your job is actually easier. If you want to do the editing, you just need to put one column of data. Okay. So I hit edit. You see, I have some residuals, some leftovers from previous exercise. So I'm going to move up my arrow. Okay, move up my arrow, and then after this L2 is highlighted, I do a clear, enter. Okay, then do it. So the entire row is cleared, and then I move left. Okay, move up, and then clear, enter. Okay. So right now, let me just put in the data: 30, -10. Okay, -19, 40. Okay, so I got all the numbers in there, and then I hit the stat again, and then right arrow, select the calculate, and then one variable stats. So since I put my numbers in L1, so I'm going to, for the list, I'm going to select second one, so I have L1 here. For the frequency list, I just clear it. Okay, and then move down to calculate. Okay, so this is my result. So although it looks easier when you just have only one column of data, it is difficult to choose your answer. Okay, you have a SX and you have a sigma X. The PowerPoint or the textbook case give you a result of a 29.1, so which is the result indicated by SX. That's your answer. Okay, and you do not choose a sigma X. So what's the difference? Why do you choose a SX over sigma X? S stands for sample. Okay, if you just have a sample of data out of the population, for example, if this 4 years from 09 to 12 is just a limited number of years for the existence of the firm. This firm may exist for 20 years or 30 years, but we only pick the 4 years for analysis. So this is just a sample. If that's the case, you are going to use SX. Okay, you are going to SX. You just use a sample of analysis. So degree of freedom got reduced by 1. That's from your statistic class. And when do you use sigma x? That's when the entire population is selected. Let's assume that the firm exists for only 4 years. Okay, only 4 years. This 4 years is just all the firm lasts. They got established 2009. They got bankrupt in 2012. So that's the entire population. If is that the case, you would choose sigma x as your standard deviation as the risk level.